Hey, listen, today we're talking about the Kalita pour over here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to our home and kitchen. Hey, listen, today we're talking about another pour over. This one's called the Kalita. And the Kalita is much different than other pour overs we've already looked at. I mean, we've looked at the V60 and we've looked at the Chemex, but if these are fussy, the Kalita is forgiving. One of the big differences is the filters. If we look at the V60 filter, you can see that it comes to a point, whereas the Kalita filter is a flat bottom. The other thing that's sort of interesting about the Kalita are these flutes. I don't know if you can see those, but it is said that as we pour water over these flutes, the water is actually directed towards the center. Now, in a pointed filter, we have a wide top and a narrow base, and everything is pushed down to the center like that. But in a flat bottom, we're looking for a bed that we're trying to go through. And that's one of the things that makes it a little bit more forgiving and not so fussy. Okay. Now, the Kalita comes with two parts. There's this little kettle, and I love this thing. It's got some markings on it. You can see if you come in close, there's a 500 mil line. And for some reason, I just think this is pretty. And, of course, it comes with the brew chamber. But the Kalita has three different kinds of brew chambers. It has a stainless steel one, it has a ceramic one, and of course the glass one I have right here. Now, the kettle is about $24. The stainless steel is about $25. This is $29. This is $39. So this is the most expensive. But let me talk about the various ones. The one I recommend the least is actually this metal one. It is the least expensive, and if you go to Amazon, it'll be the one that they recommend the most. But there's a problem with it. And I don't know if you can see these little dimples that come up. Those are meant to hold the paper away from those holes right there. But those are not high enough to do that. And so the paper wraps over the holes and actually restricts the flow. Unlike the ceramic one, you can see those crossbars are much more pronounced. And so you get a much better brew and no choking out of the ceramic. Now, in between is the glass. And the glass has no ridges holding the paper up. But what has happened here is if we look closely, if you get really close, you can see these are dimpled out. And so the paper does not restrict the flow there. So I'd recommend either the glass or the ceramic, but in terms of heat retention, both of these work about the same. But let's not consider the metal one. Today I'm going to use the ceramic, and I'll use the brew chamber. But let me say this too. 24, nearly 30 something. You could skip this. I'm often known to brew just in a ball jar. Works the same. Not as cute, but works the same. So you could just invest in the brew chamber. That'd be fine. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about pour over, because we talk about these various phases. The bloom, the agitation, the percolation. Well, what are they all about? Well, what we're trying to do is extract the water-soluble components out of the bean. Now, the bean itself is made up of about 30% cellulose, like wood product, right? And that kind of stays behind. But the rest of the material is like a dash of oil and these water-soluble components. Well, the bloom phase, I want you to think about that like a volcano. The bloom phase is an opportunity to get the grounds all wet, but also to let the gases go. CO2, nitrogen, trapped from roasting. The agitation phase is like water running down a brook over rocks, and you can see the rocks tumbling. We're literally trying to agitate the grounds. We're trying to get some of those solubles to dissolve and go out with the water. And then finally the percolation phase, which is like water going through sand. And as it sifts through the sand, it pulls the last of the water-soluble components out. All those things make a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee is about 98% water. The rest are coffee solubles. Doesn't sound very exciting when I say it like that, but that's what's going on. All right, well, let me go ahead and brew a pot with the Kalita. And I'm going to get some coffee first. We're going to use the traditional ratio of 30 grams of coffee to 500 grams of water.
Milliliters.
Well, milliliters and grams are the same thing, as you know, and that's a good catch. Everybody needs to know that. We can measure it in milliliter, or we can weigh it by gram, because 1 milliliter equals 1 gram. It's a real gift that it worked out that way. All right. Let me start by measuring coffee. I'm going to turn on my scale, my timer at the same time, but we're just going to be weighing at this point. And because I started with the glass on, it tared out, and so now we're at 0. Now, I'm going to do something that a lot of folks would consider sacrilegious. I'm going to use pre-ground coffee. And you know why? The Kalita is really forgiving. Okay? And maybe we don't have to be as fussy with our coffee. It's okay that it's pre-ground. And it's okay because of this. You know what? Not everybody can afford a $150 grinder, you know? And maybe you just go to your local coffee shop like BIGGBY and you pick up a bag of ground coffee. I mean, you don't want to hold on to it forever, right? But a professionally ground bag of coffee is just fine. We're using one of our Farm Direct coffees here today. Our Living Hope coffee. Comes from Zambia. It's a really beautiful coffee. Okay, we got to get 30 grams in here. And babe, if you'll help me keep an eye on it and give me a count each time a spoon goes
15,
in. Okay.
21.
All right.
26.
Oh.
31.8.
Okay.
30.5. 30.
30. I love the teamwork. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay. So here we've got our 30 grams of coffee. We have to do something that we always need to do, and that is to, I'm going to use a ceramic filter. We have to rinse our filter, otherwise two things. One, we'll get paper flavor in our coffee, and two, we won't preheat these things, and if we don't preheat these things will steal away the heat from our hot water. And we've got some hot water here, and I'm just going to rinse the paper. It'll take just a minute. So rinsing the paper takes away paper flavor, and it preheats. I can feel this ceramic is now warm, and of course this is warm here. Okay. There we go. Now we got to tear this out, and we're back to 0. We'll verify that we have about 30 grams of coffee one more time. Yeah, 30.1. And then what I'm going to do is level this out by just giving it a quick shake. We always want our coffee to be level. I like to put a little divot in it, and we're sort of ready to go. Now, there's two things that happen at this moment. We go back to 0, and we hit our timer, and we start the bloom phase. Okay, tear, timer. Okay, now I put 30 grams of coffee in. During the bloom phase, our goal is to put about twice as many grams of water than coffee. Okay, so we should be looking at about 60. If it ended up at 65, that would be fine. What do you got? 70. Don't sweat it, right? This is very forgiving, but can you see the little bubbles coming out there? I'm going to add a little more water. You can see that it sort of becomes like a volcano. All right. Now we're going to let that go for about 30 seconds. What is it, 37?
38.
38. If it went for 30, 45 seconds, all that would be good. Okay? That's the bloom phase. Come on in a little bit closer, and we're going to talk about agitation. We're still going to get a little blooming at this point. You'll see little bubbles coming up. And the motion here is inside, out, inside, out. Now, what's my grams right now?
150, 160.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And our goal is 300, or about 60% of the total volume of water is what we're looking to get in here. Okay, so we're going to shoot for 300 grams, and right now we're at
250.
Okay. And you can see that I'm being a little aggressive and trying to churn the water a little bit. What am I at?
272.
279. All right.
280. 300.
Perfect. Okay, don't go too far away because we're going to, you can see the bed is starting to fall. You can see there's a little bit of coffee up on the sides. And some like to do this, some don't. I actually like to knock the sides down a little bit like this. And now we're going to pour at a much slower rate, okay? A much slower rate, still inside out. And our goal is now to get to 500 grams. We don't want the bed or the top of the water to go below where we were. We want to just keep adding water inside out, rinsing down the sides until we get to 500. You can see that motion is really soft and easy. Soft and easy.
444.
All right, we're almost there. Now this Living Hope coffee was roasted a little dark, so brew temperature is 195. You can go as high as 205.
480.
But when it's a little bit darker, you'd rather have the temperature be closer to 195.
500.
Okay, beautiful. Now, one little trick. Right here, we're going to give this a swirl. Okay, we're going to give it a swirl. And that's going to ensure that we flatten out the bed a little bit. Okay, and now we're just going to wait for it to drip through. Hey, I mentioned that we're using Living Hope, one of our farm direct coffees from Zambia. Farm direct to us means that we eliminated the brokers in the deal, and we took the money that the brokers would have taken and given it directly to the farm. And we're giving it to farms that are treating people right and treating the planet right and investing in their local communities. I mean, really, that's what One Big On in Space is all about. And I hope you find out more about that by going to our blog, One Big On in Space, with 2 G's. Okay, we stopped dripping. We're about 341. Look how easy that was. Easy peasy. Okay. And I want you to come in and just take a look at how flat that bed came out. It's really quite beautiful. Great extraction.
It's like there's a swirl in the middle.
Yeah. And this is, of course, the Kalita. It's not fussy. It's forgiving. Okay. Let me pour a cup of coffee. I've got a little glass here. Get this turned off. And what's nice about this one, of course, it says BIGGBY Coffee, but it's got cork on the outside. If you like looking at your coffee like I do, that's one reason I like these kinds of pots, is you can see right into it. And pour yourself a little cup like this. And take your first sip. Oh, that's really good. You know, the Living Hope coffee has a little black cherry in it, to me. Just a slight taste of tobacco. You might say, well, that's not appealing, but it really is. It's rather interesting. But here's what you should know. When you try coffee hot, it tastes one way. When you try coffee warm, it tastes another. And when it gets right down to room temperature, it tastes something different again. And I just want you to run that experiment for yourself at home, because you'll find a new discovery about how coffee tastes if you do. Sometimes we think we need to drink coffee piping hot, but that's really not true. It's almost best at room temperature. All right, that's about all we have time for today. I do want to remind you, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed or even liked this particular post. But also, hey, maybe you didn't like that, what we just talked about. Go ahead and tell us that in the comments. Or maybe you liked it, tell us that in the comments. If you have ideas about what you'd like to see, let us know. we'd really appreciate it. Now, on that note, I'm going to leave you with this. When you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInspace.com with 2 G's.